really staying true to his role.
Yeah, so a couple of new additions to the Melbourne Mavericks roster, new additions to Overwatch Contenders as well. But for Legacy Esports, a must-win battle here on Ilios. They're going to be starting off on Sombra Goats and Melbourne Mavericks with the more or less triple DPS setup.
Yeah, they're running this pick-off-centered thing, composition. They're looking for Flying Luigis and Mercedes to put the damage into these Legacy Esports members as they're rotating. The Ana from Lab is very vulnerable, but he already hits a sleep onto Flying Luigi straight out of the gates. You'll have to see that.
Yeah, it's unfortunate for Legacy that they weren't really able to capitalize on that because they've decided to go back to spawn to change up their composition.
Yeah, and this is very interesting. They're swapping over to a composition that I haven't seen. It's a 3-tank with a Roadhog instead of the Zarya. This is obviously to displace maybe the tanks of the Melbourne Mavericks, but they only have an Orisa, so this is a very curious composition coming out.
Potentially for Rani as well, he can hook Flying Luigi's out of the air if he gets too low, trying to contest there inside, and unfortunately for Legacy, it's not started off well with Lab being knocked off the edge by the concussion blast and Flying Luigi's. Well, gets a couple, but there's a couple of trades back as well from the Legacy members. It seems as though they've gotten themselves into a solid position on the point, and you always knew that that was going to be the way that it would go. Once Legacy got to the point, they have a more favourable composition for fighting in those close engagements.
Yeah, it's very difficult for the Widow to get the sightlines, as well as the Pharah to get the sightlines once you're in on that point, but that was very interesting that they were managed to pull it back, that Flying Luigi's gets the knockoff on Lab, and I thought it was going to be all over from there, but with that Roadhog, you do have the self-sustain, and Stolen was able to keep his team up too, and really get solidified on that point with that nice tanky composition that they do have. See the EMP build up from Nidus. I think that's going to be the key to this fight. As Stolen goes off the map.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened. Perhaps off the back of a concussion blast, something, but he's off the map regardless. And now it's a 2-for-1. Mercedes finding a pick through the infra side, I'd say, onto Fundray. Self-destruct goes out from Noosh, and he's not going to get too much damage done from it. But even still, the fight persists on the point. That's more or less favourable for Legacy because they're still building ticks up.
Flying Luigi's gets the nano boost. He's like a Mozzie at the moment, just poking around. You want to smack him if you're that Roadhog player, but it looks like Legacy are going down on the point. I find Nidus, but will that be enough?
Well, Rocket Barrage perhaps is going to be, as Fundray leaps straight into it. It's the 1-for-1 there in that small skirmish. Rani, he had a Bionade on top of him, so the take a breather doesn't really help him out too much. Lab gets tagged in the head with the second shot from Mercedes. That'll finish him off, and once again, it's going to be another Infrasight built up for Widowmaker. Mercedes has been a real key part of this Melbourne Mavericks roster since he's joined it. Andre is not going to have a fun time there at all. Does actually at least get the bubble down, so survives somehow. And yet the EMP out from Legacy Esports, perhaps too little too late. It does collect 4 Melbourne Mavericks players, but where's the follow-up here from Legacy? There just doesn't seem to be any. Must be said though, Legacy still have control of the point.
Yeah, Legacy are just too tanky at the moment. They're not getting off the point. They've managed to stall out to 90. Fundray with the ult comes through. That gets even more points. Luigi's goes down. He looks like he killed himself on the mech, and this is now maybe it's time for flip over for the Melbourne Mavericks.
Maybe finally they can get something done. Melbourne Mavericks is still hanging around there in overtime.
Stall gets the beat.
What? I mean, I don't know
to
about
no
that
avail,
one.
It looks like he didn't get the members on the point. They go down, and now they're in a little tricky situation. It's going to be hard to retake without a defensive ult here. Nidus has the EMP too, so this should be an easy fight win for the side of the Melbourne Mavericks. That EMP barrage combo is quite nasty, especially if he catches Noosh on that Diva.
Seems like a relatively unfortunate mistake from Stolen Picnic, but with that said, there is still about 50-60% here for Legacy before they need to start getting worried. So we can, in theory, build another sound barrier up before things get too difficult. Regardless, once again, Legacy are going to walk their way back onto the point. As you mentioned, the translocator was destroyed. Ike's going to go down, Stolen Picnic as well. And 2 kills coming off the back of the Rocket Barrage for Flying Luigi's does put an end to the fight very, very easily indeed.
Yeah, they did use the Widow Walls in there too, but they managed to get to the point, Legacy, and cap it over. That means Melbourne Mavericks have missed out on a few percent here. They should have had that. Interesting that they let them get that far. I would have liked to have seen them initiate earlier, maybe as they're rotating to the point.
It's unfortunate though for Stolen Picnic. He really did go down early in that fight. I don't think he was actually with his team for the majority of it. He was trying to deal with Nidus on the back line. And as a result, hasn't built up too much of that sound barrier, 22%. Once again, Legacy though will make a committed push in toward the point, and they do manage to get inside, but Mercedes able to find 2. Rani and Stolen Picnic are down. There's going to be Dank charging across forward and blocking the self-destruct with his bubble. And even if that was not enough, he's going to invest the Primal Rage as well. push comes to shove, Legacy are going to have to back away here, and I don't know if they're going to get time for a recontest.
No, it's looking very dire on the side of Legacy as Rani gets EMP. That makes him very vulnerable. It looks like it's just Rani and Ike hanging around at the moment. It's not going to last that long. They've managed to hack Ike as well, but he gets the kill into Flying Luigi's miraculously.
Yeah, he did a lot of damage over to Nidus as well. Coalescence just to try and get Lab a bit closer to the point, but not to be. Melbourne Mavericks are now 1 round away from their first win.
Yeah, and it looked like Legacy just had no idea how to deal with that DPS composition there. They were, they had some interesting choices. The Roadhog came out. It didn't really achieve its target goal of displacing the tank. Dank played well on the Winston, though. That was a real star moment for him, getting the double with that Primal Rage. And Melbourne Mavericks, they're on the cusp of a map win. And they're going in for this Orisa comp on Well, which has been very popular over the last few years that we've seen Orisa in the game. And we see Legacy matching them too. Ike on the Tourbillon. Something out of the Atlanta Rain playbook even.
You're a bit of a fan of the Tourbillon smash.
We've seen it a lot this season. It's quite exciting seeing how players are using it. The ultimate's pretty good for area, denial, and he does a lot of damage, deceptive amount of damage with that right click especially.
No pull port combo though for Melbourne Mavericks, so they don't have the Roadhog to help out the Orisa.
Legacy does have the advantage there, but it looks like they're going to go back to spawn and swap. They've seen something they don't like. Ike on the Tourbillon. Popping some harassment. He swaps over to the Widow.
Oh.
Ike enjoys playing these DPS heroes, these Widows, those Traces, so hopefully he can get some work done.
Just see Flying Luigi's duck his head down straight away as soon as he sees that Widowmaker swap come out. Just getting back there in time for Legacy as well to contest the point before the cap went across, which is pretty nice. That said, Fundray cops a Bionade to the face. And quite a few bullets to follow that as well. A 2-for-1 trade, but Legacy starting to fall by the wayside with Mercedes Flying Luigi's. The DPS players now for Melbourne Mavericks starting to rise up. And unfortunately for Legacy, it means they're going to have to fall back.
And now this is hard to retake with the Orisa composition. They really need to get this pull port combo off. Nush on the Roadhog, Fundrail on the Orisa need to work together to get the opening pick here. Although Melbourne Mavericks, they don't have many heroes that are vulnerable to it. The Pharah and the Mercy want to stay away.
Oh, that's a big boot, pushes Noosh way out of position. And now Ike has been collapsed upon by the Pharah. Flying Luigi's opens it up once again for Melbourne Mavericks. This is not looking good for Legacy. Concussion Blast does go a little by the wayside, but it's not too much of a problem for Melbourne Mavericks at this point, as they are really just decimating Legacy.
Yeah, it's looking pretty dire for the side of Legacy actually, as Melbourne Mavericks haven't had to use any ultimates really to hold this point, and it's climbing in percentage pretty quickly. Ike, he's had to swap off the Widowmaker. Flying Luigi's is just getting too much space. I mean, yeah, Widow counters Pharah, but not if the Pharah is sitting on top of him.
Oh.
Bit of how you going?
Next found Nidus, which is going to force the translocate back out.
Rani's now swapped over to this Genji too, so this dive composition coming out from Legacy.
I suppose what else can you do at this point? You have to change something up. There's only 30% left on this one, and Legacy, they do not want to be the first team to drop a map against Melbourne Mavericks, but they may well indeed be. Translocated through from Nidus. Ike decides to run away.
He's done a good job at pressuring though, Ike. He's really forced them all together. And maybe they can catch an advantage here, but no, nothing so far.
They're looking for the EMP out from Nidus. Not really in a position to use it just yet, but as soon as Legacy commits to the point, you can bet your bottom dollar that that is going to be thrown on through. Supercharger is destroyed, but then so too is Rani. Can't get the Reflect up in time. Flying Luigi's will get one with a Rocket Barrage. Mercedes a second with the Storm Arrows. And it's looking like it's all over now for Legacy. It's just on a Stolen Picnic to try and get those touches as his team falls around him, but Legacy, they appear to be the first team that's going to drop a map to Melbourne Mavericks, and it's a better start to this series than we would have anticipated for Melbourne Mavericks. Just a matter of time, Smash. Finally, overtime ticks away. There it is, confirmed. Melbourne Mavericks now with one map on the board. It's not going to be the 0-28 season that we were, I don't know, maybe quietly hoping for in a way.
I mean, Legacy just looked like they were lost there. They had no idea how to deal with these compositions coming out from the side of the Melbourne Mavericks, and you saw that in the fact that Melbourne Mavericks were able to hold the point until 99 and then use ultimates. I mean, they didn't have to use any ultimates to hold the point until 99, and that is disastrous if you're a Legacy Esports fan, because they just didn't show any initiative on how to break the Orisa compositions or how to deal with the Widowmaker or the snipers, the Hanzo. That's concerning if I'm a Legacy player.
It did seem very, very messy indeed from Legacy Esports. I don't know what was going on there. You know, we've heard a bit of discussion around this Legacy roster in the past, and there's been the choker word.
Oh, it's been thrown
out.
around.
You know,
Yep.
This is another situation where, like, you go into this as Legacy. It's probably the only match of the season where you're the favorite, and you've already lost map 1. It raises some questions.
Interesting enough, they didn't play any Brig, I think. I don't think they picked Big once in that series, and that's something that the Legacy team has revolved around for the past, 6 months that they've been active. That they've always been playing this GOATS composition, and they've always stacked up pretty well against everybody else. But looks like they've strayed away from that, and they're getting punished for it pretty heavily.
And again, not going back towards the compositions as well that we've really seen work for them. Even when they haven't had like necessarily a Brig kind of a setup. So we're looking at the likes of Doom for Sombra. We didn't really see that from Legacy. They didn't try that. They didn't really give it even a fair shake of the sauce bottle with the Sombra goats at all.
No, but I'll tell you who was shaking the sauce bottle. It was Flying Luigi's on that Pharah. He was playing very well. It's good to see a nice little moment from him. He played Pharah on both maps and got big value out of all of his barrages, and his positioning was pretty good too. Didn't get caught by that pulled pork combo that we saw Yuki getting caught by yesterday, so props to Flying Luigi's on that first map. He played pretty well.
Now, we questioned a few of the roster changes that we've seen from Melbourne Mavericks this season, but so far so good for this particular one. Yeah. It's basically the best roster change that they've made because it has resulted in their best result so far. Even if Melbourne Mavericks were to lose the rest of this series, at least they get their one map on the board. They're not going to have the 0-28 season. I don't know what the kind of word you would want to really put in that department is. Like, what would you call the 0-28 season? The bin chicken season?
The bin chicken season,
maybe.
Indeed. Yep. Yeah. No, they were the first team, I think, to go, as Tainted Minds escaped that in Season 1.
Yeah. But they've dodged that, so no worries about that one for Melbourne Mavericks. Now, the storyline has to change for Melbourne Mavericks to being one from, okay, this is a disaster season. Are they ever going to be able to even get a map? To now, maybe, after what we've seen on Ilios, becoming, hey, actually, can Melbourne Mavericks win this series? And if they do, then next week and the week following, where does it go from there?
Well, I think if they do, then it's the nail in the coffin for Legacy season. It makes it very difficult for them to catch up and get into that top 6 and make that playoffs run. That I was quietly confident that they'd do, but after seeing that performance, it's quite risky to bet on Legacy for that. That's for sure.
Definitely.
Volskaya could be a different story though. It is more centered around that Winston 3-3. Especially on the first point on defense, and that's something that Legacy kind of excels at. Fundre, very good Winston player, as well as being a good Ryan player, so I think he'll be a lot more comfortable there. And Ilios proved to be a bit of an upset for the side of Mavericks, but can they pull these compositions out on Volskaya without being punished?
Yeah, I suspect that you probably can. We saw a little bit of it yesterday in the Ground Zero and Warriors match, where they were sort of throwing everything at each other. Even actually the Mind Freak and Order game, we saw a couple of Widowmakers, particularly on point A. We know that there's a good Widowmaker on the Melbourne Mavericks roster in Mercedes, so is that an avenue that Melbourne Mavericks wants to explore? I'd say probably.
Yeah, I'd definitely say that they've found their little flavour now. They're with Flying Luigi's in. Mercedes, who's shown that he likes to play these DPS heroes. He prefers them a lot more to the old Brig Zarya combination. And Nidus on that Sombra, I know that he likes to play that.
One thing I will say before we do get into Volskaya is that Legacy have traditionally been an awful team on control. So
very true.
It is unfortunate to see them dropping the first map to Melbourne Mavericks, but it's not like it's a nail in the coffin just yet for Legacy. There is still a world in which they 3-1 this series. The following maps the map types have been their better map types. Control, they're now like 0 and 7 on. So I don't know how much I necessarily want to read into that for Legacy. Particularly after last week, I spoke to Stolen and I said, hey, twice in a row you've lost 3-2, but he just sort of said, yeah, we're not a control team. I was like, well, fair enough. That's pretty evident to me after having looked at the stats, mate. But there's another instance of it, perhaps, for Legacy. Yeah, they can make amends for it, though, here on Volskaya.
You definitely can make amends for it on Volskaya. And they've actually gone for this double main tank. They've got Rani on the Wrecking Ball and Fundre on the Winston. So maybe they know that there's DPS composition's going to come out. But straight away, Rani's been hacked.
Yeah, that's not what you want at all when you're on Wrecking Balls. Probably the single worst thing that can happen to you, apart from maybe getting frozen by a May. It does get rid of a Mercedes. A lot of importance being put onto that pick for Legacy. Rani getting healed back up by his teammates out of the hack now, able to do a lot of damage. In fact, actually gets 3 final blows in that fight. And Mercedes forced back by Fundre. So it's an interesting composition to be sure from a Legacy, but it seems to have worked.
Yeah, the idea behind this, I can see it forming now. They like to sit in this chokehold and not give the DPS heroes any space. If you don't give that Widowmaker space to use their sightlines, the Pharah space to use the air, and it's really working out nicely. Flying Luigi's hasn't been able to get much done. He hasn't been able to find the targets he wants to put these rockets into to build that ult charge, and he's pretty low now.
Be putting him in towards a player like Lab, but Lab's kind of safe at this point. Noosh will get D-necked. Maybe that's the opener for Melbourne Mavericks, or perhaps it's completely the opposite of that as the dive once again goes through from Legacy and once again proves to be quite fruitful. Noosh this time was picked off, and it's going to take a little while to get back to this fight, so if Melbourne Mavericks mobilize quickly, they may well find their opener.
Yeah, Stolen getting very aggressive there, lucky not to get picked off, and now Legacy, they have a nice little ult bank. If they can avoid this EMP from Nidus and maybe the barrage from Flying Luigi, they should have a good shot in this fight. Mercedes using that walls though makes it a lot easier for them to get in here. They might be able to take some space and use their heroes.
I think they have done just that. Fundray having to leap on backwards.
Stolen!
Picnic out in the open. Gets picked off. You call it picnic. I think it's just pick coming out from Melbourne Mavericks. And this is exactly what they were looking for. All it takes is one. And for Legacy Esports, unfortunately, there is just going to be too much to deal with.
Yeah, you saw as soon as Mercedes had that space to move, as soon as the DPS heroes from the side of the Melbourne Mavericks were able to push in and take some different angles, it became very difficult for Legacy to hold up. Stolen losing track of the Widowmaker there and getting punished for it. And now the snowball onto point 2. Will it happen? It looks like Rani swapped over to this Genji. So he's going to be looking to put a lot of pressure on Issy Boy. Nidus makes an appropriate swap though, the Brigitte. That will really shut down Rani.
Is it going to be so easy as that? Noosh on the point, spots out what's going on for Melbourne Mavericks. Ike's got himself EMP here, which is really crucial.
It's very crucial. They're going to look to engage early too, I think. They really don't want to give them the space to play with here. A lot of ults on the side of Legacy. Let's see how they're going to use them.
Well, EMP's going to go on out. It really collects a couple of the Melbourne Mavericks players, and not too impactful ones really either, with Morwood and Dank not suffering any losses off the back of that EMP. Now the Primal Rage from Dank, and he's going to try and harass Stolen Picnic,
Mercedes is popping off.
Once again gets absolutely smacked by Mercedes. So 2 players down immediately from the outset for Legacy. Mike's going to have to translocate on out. I would not want to be in the sightline of Mercedes either.
Oh, at the moment, Stolen's challenging him though.
I suppose what else could you do when you're just getting picked off like that? At least you're going to try and take the fight to Mercedes, but realistically speaking, it doesn't seem like there's all that much of a problem for Mercedes. Fundray now with his Primal Rage does smash a few of the Melbourne Mavericks players off the point, and an EMP went through in the meanwhile there for Ike, which opens the door a little bit for Rani to have some fun. And finally, Legacy's able to push Melbourne Mavericks back, but one tick picked up already.
Yeah, that was the second EMP from Ike in that fight. He managed to get the second one out, and that kind of closed the deal. Although Mercedes got the first 2 picks on the side of Melbourne Mavericks, he was unable to close anything out. And Flying Luigi's going down meant they didn't have the damage dealers there on the point to get the follow-up kills and start getting that progress. They managed to get it to 58, but they would have liked a lot more out of this. And we've talked about Roro with the Dragon Blade for seasons now, and now we get to see Rani with the Dragon Blade. Lab does have the Nano Boost, and I assume it will go onto him. Mavericks are going to have a hard time dealing with this too. No support ults ready for it.
The Dragon Blade through from Rani, but he gets shattered, or rather shield bashed, straight in the face, and isn't able to get anything done. Flying Luigi's, however, still playing those flying characters on the Diva this time, able to find a couple of picks. Mercedes charged up nicely. No more Widowmaker, but doesn't seem too necessary. The Zaya certainly doing a good job as Self-Destruct goes flying through onto the point. That one Legacy Esports, but doesn't really do a whole lot to harass Melbourne Mavericks. Dank with Primal Rage pushing straight back on in the direction of Legacy Esports, and Stolen Picnic is the focus of the fire. Eventually gets chased down. It's Flying Luigi's to find that kill, but nonetheless, it's a kill that Melbourne Mavericks will be quite happy to see coming up in the kill feed.
Really
Sooner or later, this is going to run out.
Yeah, and Fundray's back, and he's probably going to be able to build his ultimate off this. Rani on the Doomfist might be able to get a pick off here. The beat comes in from Stolen. It's a good one. It keeps Rani a little bit... No, sorry, Fundray alive just long enough.
Oh, what is that? How's that happened? Oh, no.
Well, that's one way to put an exclamation point on the point, isn't it? But we saw Rani there with that nano-boosted Dragon Blade. He must have got a concussion from that bash because he was lost in the source after that. He really didn't know where he was. Unable to get anything from it, and that really opened up the point, and Melbourne Mavericks were able to capitalize. It was a long fight, but Flying Luigi's the star player at the moment on this Melbourne Mavericks roster.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, God, this is a bit scary for Legacy. Imagine being down 0-2. going into halftime break.
I think they're a bit shell-shocked. They look a bit shell-shocked, don't they? They might have expected an easier matchup with this Melbourne Mavericks roster having no signs of life in the previous 4 weeks, but now they've come in swinging. Nothing to lose.
Be an all too familiar situation for Legacy, as we were basically saying the same things about them all of last season up to the match they played against Mind Freak. And we thought that was a winnable match for them, and then suddenly they get crushed. So does their season. It's going to potentially be the same thing today. If Melbourne Mavericks go 2-0 up, I don't see Legacy coming back from that.
Yeah, it will be very difficult to come back from. We haven't seen a reverse sweep in Australian Contenders this season. So maybe we get the first here today, but there's a long way to go. Legacy on the attack now. They do have the opportunity to answer back with a better time. It'll be interesting to know what they're thinking right now. Thunder running around right-clicking on McCree. He's not going to be playing that hero, unfortunately. Maybe they'll look for a bit of DPS play themselves with Rani and Ike locking these heroes so far, but you never know. Could swap it up at any minute. I'm expecting Fundre to go Orisa here and there'll be a slow composition being played. It looks like I'm right.
It's the first time for everything, Smash.
Yeah, there really is. Flying Luigi's, scouting the outside, making sure nobody's trying to sneak in.
It's been a day of firsts. Melbourne Mavericks got their first win.
I was right for the first time,
Yeah, we were right for the first time.
Ooh, we're going to see these Widows run into each other.
Pretty scary kind of an Angel. You just walk around the corner, there's your opposition Widow right in front of you. I'm not too keen on taking that duel. Nidus actually gets the hack onto Rani there somehow, and Rani falls straight to the ground, which means obviously Stolen Picnic will as well. Ike's been given a bit of room to work with, and Nusha finding the pick onto Dank. It means obviously the main tank out of the picture here for Melbourne Mavericks. Mercedes will drop to Rani with a concussion blast. Not sure what's going on there, nonetheless. Difficult situation for Melbourne Mavericks to salvage here, and they will need the next pick if they're going to make it happen.
Oh, they'll need more than that, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen as Flying Luigi's gets pulled into the middle of the team. He cartwheels out, but unfortunately, not with his life.
Not with really much left for Melbourne Mavericks either. That's a very fast cap. 7 minutes available for Legacy to play with. Not a huge amount of ults built up off the back of it. It was too quick.
Oh, Fundre taking a few shots there as he walks up. Forgot to drop his shield maybe. Mercedes has picked off Ike though with the grapple shot. That's a nice play. The res does come out, so the push will not be halted. But Rani will pick off Nidus, and now Legacy have the opportunity to pile in.
Well, there's an infraside available for Mercedes. I'm not sure how much that is going to help, but in fact he actually threw it out there as well. So that's been cancelled by the Coalescence, and does it really matter at this point whether or not the ult came out, because Melbourne Mavericks have just been utterly slaughtered on this defense. Nidus being picked was the catalyst for it for Legacy. Now he has to do something about it. He got cancelled by the hook. Noosh coming up big for Legacy Esports, and if there was any way to turn this around for Melbourne Mavericks, it was going to be that EMP, which is now not an option. And that is a great response from Legacy, because it was looking so dire for them.
Take a bow, Noosh. Gets the 3k on the first point, hooks the Pharah out of mid-air, really opens the point up. And then on second point, he goes in, gets the EMP cancel. I was calling for Hog yesterday in the previous series, but I'm glad I've got it today because it's really showing up. And you saw the combination there from Fundre and Nush using that pulled pork combination. I assume that's what happened on the Orisa on first point. He just took him out of the fight straight away. And Legacy, maybe they are a bunker team.
Maybe. That's a little disappointing for Melbourne Mavericks. It was starting to really get rolling, and then all of a sudden that door has been slammed shut in their face. I guess the argument here is it's probably still unlocked. 2 minutes 46, it's enough to maybe get 2 caps. If they can do that, have a bit of a better time on their defense.
Oh, anything's possible.
Anything is possible here on Volskaya.
100% correct. Anything is possible, and it looks like both teams are going to be favouring that bunker composition. So you're going to see what everybody loves to see, those Widow jewels, those Pharah jewels, except Rani's chosen to go onto the Ashe now. So this is going to put added pressure on Flying Luigi's. We did see him play Diva on second point, so he has got that in his wheelhouse too. But it's a different defense from Legacy. No longer playing the ball and the Winston and holding close. They look like they're going to favour this Roadhog Orisa combination.
Well, it was working until it didn't for Legacy, so I can see the sense in swapping the composition up. Stolen Picnic might be a little bit more survivable as well with the Mercy.
Yeah, he's got a lot of targets to Guardian Angel to here, especially with the Ashe. If the Ashe and the Widowmaker play different positions, Ike's already picked off Nidus too, so that's a nice shot.
Oh, the whole combo as well, straight onto Mercedes. It's Fundre that gets the kill there, but Well done from Noosh once again with the Roadhog, and now it's going to get even worse for Melbourne Mavericks as Legacy look to push their advantage straight into those enclosed angles. Nice aggressive play, and a good start to the defense from Legacy.
Yeah, Legacy look like they mean business on this Orisa Hog combination.
Maybe they've finally woken up.
Yeah, maybe they took it a bit easy on the first map. Maybe thought, oh, we can hide some strategies here, but Melbourne Mavericks punishing them. And so they have to answer in tow. Ike getting pressured out by the Sombra, but only tickled him. He had the double pocket there from the Harmony Orb and Stolen Picnic, ready to stop any aggression.
I don't know, mate, if someone started to just appear behind you and start tickling you, I'm not so sure how good you'd feel about that, but
Depends who it was.
wouldn't feel too good about that one either.
Ike with another headshot.
Wow. And Rani as well just cleans Flying Luigi's up out of the sky.
Wow, they look solid on this combination. They're getting these pull pork combos, the hold hooks off every time.
Who do you even spec here as Legacy?
Oh, mate, I do not envy the observers. They have an absolute hard job, I guess.
That's a really good
they have a very hard job here. They got the
so you're going to come up
Widowmaker.
with some WA-ism.
Oh, yeah, well, I'll put that on the back burner for a minute. But the Melbourne Mavericks have swapped off to this GOATS composition with the Ana and the Winston. I think they'll find it a lot easier to get in here as they throw the Winston forward to make some space.
The Impresight though does come out from Ike, and that is going to mean Legacy have a little bit more info than they otherwise would, so Melbourne Mavericks slow things down just for the moment. It's a big crossfire for Legacy, but Melbourne Mavericks dealing with it quite accordingly. They dive right on top of Lab. Dinosaur drop, but now that charge comes right in on top of Rani, and if you're getting charged on top of by a couple of main tanks, you really aren't going to be feeling too comfortable about it. Still, Rani does a good job of keeping himself alive and putting damage on out. Mercedes drops to a headshot. And it's Melbourne Mavericks again that get pushed away, and now with 26 seconds on the clock, Smash, this is their last opportunity. Yeah,
it's quite difficult when the Ashe plays on one side, the Widow plays on the other, and the Mercy can just bounce between them. It becomes difficult to enter the point. Either way, you're going to take so much damage. You have to respect the sightlines of both those heroes. When he drops Little Bobby on the point, nothing's really going to happen. Very good hero, that Ashe.
Little Bobby or Big Bobby at this point, I don't know. 40% for Rani, but we know how quickly that ultimate charge could be back up in this fight. Noosh will try and survive, and the Supercharger certainly helping out. Lab is going to get Knight as Fundray dispatched of Dank, and all the players of Melbourne Mavericks that are trying to make their way onto this point are finding it more and more difficult as their fellows fall.
Yeah, playing into a Roadhog that has that Orisa damage boost from her bongo drum there. You don't really want to be doing that as Dank. He didn't have any support as he went in there, and he's 99 on his ult when he goes down. He would have loved to have that. Displacing all these snipers would have been so lovely to have. But unfortunately for Melbourne Mavericks, they kind of fell to the wayside on that offense. They really didn't have a good answer for the bunker composition out of Legacy. The double sniper bunker with the Ashe and the Widowmaker.
Now it's almost an unwinnable position for Melbourne Mavericks. An undrawable position even. It is definitely unwinnable.
6 minutes is a very long time in Overwatch, especially with the compositions that Legacy have been picking. If you get one pick off from Ike, one pick off from Rani, even Noosh and Fundray combining, it gets very difficult for the defensive composition just because their spawn is so far away.
Well, what's the situation then for Melbourne Mavericks? Obviously you're going to have to rotate through your ultimates every single fight because you have to win the fight.
Well, they don't have those heroes that rely on rotating through those ultimates selected at the moment. It looks like they're going to roll out in this double sniper Sombra. So they've got the Sombra ultimate to rotate and work around, but these ultimates like Valkyrie, like even the Bongo, even the Widow ult, they're very hard to rotate around. And even using this Ana, I'm not sure what she's going to be nano boosting here. Maybe the Hanzo, so you can go buck wild, but just don't know if it will be enough.
I suppose you can get the...
They're going to be relying on pickoffs.
Onto the Orisa as well, if there's a bit of a brawl on the point, but you're 100% on there. Ooh. They're relying on pickoffs, and there's one for you. Mercedes gets the better of Ike, who seemed to have no idea where Mercedes was.
No, but Stolen and rezzing Ike up, and he's going to be hungry for blood after that one. We've seen these two players duel quite often so far, often running into each other without knowing.
Mercedes grappling on up, does spot out Ike, but a little bit wary of peeking the head on over. All it takes here for Legacy is the one pick, Fortify thrown in from both Orisas there. Fundray does inevitably back away.
Oh, Lab's found it.
Catches Nidus, and that is a good start to this point now for Legacy. Is the res available for Morbid? And if it is it going to come early enough? Noosh doesn't quite collect with that hook. Somehow survives a little longer than expected, even despite being bionaded. Regardless, we jump over to the Widow duel, which is going to go the way of Mercedes, and then so too does the pick onto Fundray, but it's not going to matter too many Legacy players on the point, and Legacy, they've fought back with a win on Volskaya, so we're back at 1 apiece, and all of a sudden, Legacy's looking right back in this series.
No, Mercedes went for the big play there, the big wraparound, but he met Ike, and it took too long for him to get that first kill, and so he can't get the second one, can't snowball and defend the point, and unfortunately for Mavericks, they do drop down, but this is a new zone for them. They're at 1-1 going into the halftime break, and I imagine they'll be feeling still pretty good getting that first map win, and although Volskaya didn't go their way, they've got the bunkery map out the way. It's going to be interesting to see if Legacy do play bunker for the rest of the series, or if they swap back to those goats composition. Lots of questions to be answered in this second half.
Still a couple of takeaways, I suppose, there for Melbourne Mavericks. I do feel at the moment that Mercedes is having more of an impact on the Widow than Ike is, so if those duels continue to be forced, that may be the sort of the avenue in for Melbourne Mavericks. But outside of that, really, it's hard to think where maybe Legacy is suffering more than Melbourne Mavericks.
Well, I mean, Flying Luigi's was a big player on Ilios, and you saw that Pharah come out, and they didn't really have an answer for it. But when they play this bunker composition, they have Ike on the Widow, they have Rani on the Ashe. It's a lot easier to deal with that Pharah. You know, there are threats for it. So he's had to swap to the Diva, he's had to swap to the Hanzo, and he just hasn't had the impact that he did on those previous rounds where he got to play his Widowmaker. Not his Widowmaker, his Pharah, sorry. So maybe he needs to, you know, think about how he's going about things. Maybe Mavericks need to put more resources into him instead of Mercedes and trying to let Mercedes do his own thing. But it's going to be interesting to see how they combat this problem.
Certainly is. There's still potentially 2 more maps to go, Smash. Have those first couple given you any insight as to where you think the rest of this series is going? I know you said Legacy at the start, and that, to be fair, is what I would have said as well.
Well,
has that shifted?
Yeah, it was a dominant map 1 from Mavericks, then a dominant map 2 from Legacy. It's 50-50 at the moment, but I think that Legacy have kind of found something that they can work against with the Mavericks, and they'll be using that now for the rest of the series. Havana, a good bunker map. Hollywood, a decent bunker map on defense. I think the Legacy can pull out the win here still.
All right, well, we'll see whether or not that is going to be the case. Time for us to head to a quick break. It's half time. We'll be back with the second half of this series after these.